everyone who is welcome to everyone who's starting to join us as you start to come in. And can I encourage you to jump into the chat area and let us know where you're joining us from. And as I do my introductions, I'm going to launch a poll, so you can start answering that again while I do my introduction. Let's see if have I got that screen? Okay, let me see if I can find that poll button. Poll and launch. There, so you should have a poll and up there, and you can have a go at answering that, so we can know who you are and have a better understanding of who you are, so we can respond better in this session. So welcome. You're attending a webinar presented by ApprovalMax. Today, our panel is discussing the topic, implementing robust financial controls for businesses of any size. I'm Heather Smith and I'm the moderator for today's session. By attending, you're going to gain insight on developing and implementing a strong financial controls network, evaluating financial risks and areas of vulnerability, classifying financial controls into categories to help detect, prevent and correct, and review existing and future controls by pressure testing and auditing them. So towards the end of the session, ApprovalMax Product Expert, the fabulous Justin Campbell, will walk you through product capabilities in the ApprovalMax and answer your questions. So ask any questions you do have along the way in the chat area or in the Q&A area. So I'm just going to let you know a little bit about me. I'm speaking to you from the land of the Jagera people, and I pay my respects to elders, past, present and emerging. I'm a chartered accountant and certified bookkeeper and BAS agent. I've run a management accounting digital practice for close to 2 decades, and I specialize in navigating the business apps ecosystem. So that's enough about me. I'd like to invite our expert panelists to introduce themselves. So as we introduce ourselves, I'll end the poll and we can see that 47% are accountants, 12% are bookkeepers, 24% in-house financial professionals. Thank you. So Brendan, there I could have shared the results. Sorry, I've shared the results, ma'am, and I'm off now. Brendan, can you introduce yourself?
Good morning, Heather. So Brendan Lucas here. I'm the head of accounting for the APAC region for ApprovalMax. So my role is really to provide sort of in the trenches type guidance to ApprovalMax of what it's like, what I'm seeing as an accountant working with business owners and non-for-profits. So that helps me to give ApprovalMax, let them know what else we'd like to see in the product, what works well, what they love, what they don't like, and then also participate in events like this where I get to tell people who may not be using ApprovalMax yet why they're crazy not to. And then aside from that, as I said, I do run my own accounting firm, so a team of 17. We're based out of the Sutherland Shire, and we work with non-for-profits and business owners. So that's me.
Thank you, Brendan. Justin.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Justin Campbell. I'm the solution engineer here at ApprovalMax. I've spent the last 10 years working in the accounting software industry. A lot of you may know me potentially, and over the last 10 years, I've just seen the need for financial controls and a more robust approval process with a lot of the partners, the accountants and bookkeepers that I work with over the years. And that's why I fairly recently came and joined the ApprovalMax team.
Fabulous. It's so wonderful to have you both here. So we're here to talk about how finance leaders can implement robust financial controls for businesses of any size. And there's been a lot of talk in the media about unethical and inappropriate behaviour in some realms of the accounting industry. So I'd like to initially start by asking you about leadership. How can finance leaders foster a culture of compliance and financial control within their organisations? What strategies have you found to be most effective?
Well, look, from my point of view, Heather, it's really more about the action than what's written down, because anyone can create a policy or a handbook and say, this is how we do it, and then it gets kept in the drawer and no one follows it. So then that to me is leadership trying to tick a box rather than actually practically setting the tone. So to me, it's it's how you actually conduct yourself in business, how you deal with the team, what you measure, what you report on, whether the results are good or bad. And so if there's compliance issues that your organization has to follow, being transparent with your team of how you're going. And then, if it's great, well, that's a great opportunity to celebrate. And if not, well, that's a great opportunity to explain to the team where you need to improve. So I think it's showing to your team that those things are important, getting them involved as part of the process where needed. And yeah, my big thing is it's not what's written down on paper, it's what actually happens in real life.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that, Justin?
Yeah, I do. That just made me think there's this great quote from Steve Jobs where he said, if our tools are broken, we feel broken. And when you think of financial controls, trying to do it with small business software, the software simply don't have the flexibility in the user roles or the reporting or the audit trails, have any of these things to introduce financial control. So yes, people can know that they need to introduce things like segregation of duties and do all these financial control procedures, but traditionally the software hasn't enabled it. And that was especially true in the desktop area where there might have been one computer where everyone just accessed it. So the cloud moved it a bit better, but even so, the cloud-based accounting products still don't have the functionality in it to introduce the kind of financial controls that these larger businesses need.
Absolutely. Thank you, both of you, for that. Now, let's continue that discussion and talk about current news headlines. So I'll come to you, Justin. Can you explain to us how NAB, the bank, was cheated out of millions of dollars?
Yes. So the short of it is that there was a supplier that was did events for NAB, and that this person had a personal relationship with the chief of staff of one of the big executives at NAB, and this chief of staff had a delegation of authority of up to $20 million. And so basically these inflated invoices or just completely false invoices were coming through, and we're getting by a trusted employee, we're getting the rubber stamp of approval, and that went on for several years, and it cost NAB $9 million, and the two people involved divided that pretty much roughly 50-50 between them. And you have to think, if there were just a multi-tiered approval process there where someone else had to review it, that $9 million could have been saved.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just shocking that happened. Do you have any thoughts on that, Brendan?
I still find it crazy in today's world with internet banking and digital tokens, net security tokens, where if it's not your money, as in you're the sole business owner, how you let someone else have sole signatory access to your bank accounts, I think is just crazy in this world. And so that's where you'll see, given we do a lot of non-for-profit work, we see auditors basically, if they don't have two to sign, that's always something they bring up as a simple control you can bring in. And again, that's the last line of defense. ApprovalMax is about stopping it even getting to that point. But yeah, I think it's just crazy where people give someone basically the keys to their house and go take it, do whatever you like with it. I think that's just opening up these sort of issues to happen. Maybe not always at $9 million, but for some client losing 50 grand, that can be life-changing in a very poor way.
Absolutely, yeah. And while it's a monetary amount, it was a monetary amount over a very long period of time, which is also quite concerning. So what are some of the key steps involved in developing strong financial controls in frameworks?
Well, look, for me, Heather, it's I guess it's working out what you've got in place already, and working out whether what you've got is adequate. So looking at things as Justin touched on before, segregation of duties is quite an obvious one, but then it's working out what does that actually mean? How do we actually segregate these roles between who opens the gets the emails or gets the bills, who's going to approve it that we should pay it, who's going to actually make the payment? And so sometimes people, segregation of duties, they think they've done it, but actually in the long run, the actual same person should actually have control and influence over the whole process. So in that case, it actually isn't true segregation of duties. So I think once you've sort of worked out what's adequate, what's not, what you need to change, It's then making sure that those relevant people understand the process that you want to put in place, or that already is in place and they're not following, and get their buy-in and understanding. Because we know with change management, if you don't have someone's buy-in or they don't get it, it doesn't last. So I think that's sort of really key steps at the start is, it's, if you want to have financial control, which, to me means also you're trusting other people in the process so you can still monitor it. Well, if they're not going to follow it, it's not going to work. This is now when it's bigger than just you.
Absolutely. And following on from that, how can you document and communicate this financial controls framework across the organization to ensure everyone has full understanding and compliance?
Well, interesting. I think Justin might show us some stuff later where you can do some good printouts from ApprovalMax of how your workflows, and that can be documented. So that's a great tool. But I think the main thing there is trying to keep it simple. If we're looking at delegation approvals, I've seen usually works well as quite a simple table as far as different levels of authority, whether it's dollar amounts or different suppliers, or diagrams. We often do diagrams of trying to explain to clients, well, look, this is how your process will work. The bill comes in, it goes in through Dex, it goes to ApprovalMax, it comes to Xero, it then goes to the bank, and people get that, right? Because you'd be communicating this to people who aren't dealing in accounts and finance every day, so you need to make it, take away the jargon and a clear process, and then again working out where your risks are, and then making sure that's really clear to people. Those couple of key steps that you want that are most important in the process, so that everyone gets it. Because then you've got a better chance of it actually, following through and people understanding it. Because if you don't understand it, it's not going to work.
Absolutely. What tools are you using for drawing your diagrams?
I still use PowerPoint. I'm a Microsoft guy. I like PowerPoint, but I probably need to try something else. What do you recommend these days, Heather?
Oh, completely fine. You could have said pen and pencil or a Canva or something like that. So yeah, no, completely fine. And any thoughts in there, Justin?
Yeah, just kind of was reflecting on something I read the other day. So in 2021, Xero did a survey based on it was in relation to an ASIC scam awareness week or something, and what they found is that the biggest group who were falling victim of invoice fraud was those businesses that had between 5 and 19 employees. And so they found, they were much more likely than businesses who were sole traders or micro businesses. And it makes sense that when you start out, everything that's going on in your business. If it's just you, generally speaking, you'll be able to look at an invoice and spot something odd with it or wrong with it just by looking at it. But as you grow and you've got other people who are responsible for things inside of a business, and it kind of goes back to the NAB example that you can't just be signing off on invoices that come through, that as you grow, you need to actively think about it and maybe do some of those diagrams Brendan was talking about, and actually having a procedure, work out what your procedure should be under certain things. And then of course you can go into ApprovalMax and then make those procedures basically automatic, because you've built all the workflows and things to have happened.
And I think as the financial person coming in, especially when you're working with not-for-profits, which I've done a little bit as well, you have to make it look as simple as possible. So having a visual PowerPoint, as you're suggesting, because a lot of the people in the organization are volunteers as well, which sometimes it can be a struggle. It's like they just come in for 3 hours to do something on a volunteer basis, and you want it as simple as possible. So implementing a solution with a visual documents that they understand the flow, it means that they learn it, means that they can understand it and understand why they're doing it.
Yeah.
So
and I think, oh, sorry, Heather, just with what Justin was saying about the smaller businesses to the larger ones, I think it's a real challenge that as you grow, and I've realized more and more, I'm a bit of a control freak. I love control, but I can't have control anymore because I got 17 staff. But so letting go of control is really hard. But half the reason of letting go of control, I think, is because you don't trust that it's going to work. And so to me, financial controls is about putting a process or controls in place so that you know it's working or you know it's not working. And to me, I think that's really, if you're going to let go of some control, then you need to have a good process around that so that you can, you feel safe, you feel like your money is safe, because that's ultimately what we're talking about here. It's, especially in business, that's your money, or if it's non-profit, it's that money you've been given for a special cause, and you protect it with your life almost sometimes.
So if you put the controls in place, you can sleep at night.
Agreed. Very, very soundly.
Fabulous. So what tools and strategies do you use to identify and assess financial risks and vulnerabilities? And could you give some examples around this?
So I think when we're looking to assess the different risks, I guess we're trying to work out what can go wrong. And sometimes the first thing is to work out what's already gone wrong. Because usually these things, sometimes you'll be proactive and you'll come to this and go, oh, I really should put that in place because that could happen. But I'd say more often than not, it's because something went wrong and you go, I don't want that to happen again. So I think part of it is then working out, well, what happened? Why did it happen? What can we learn from, and how do we make sure that doesn't happen again? I think that can a whole lot of different parts of life. But I think with this, in this financial environment, I think that's a really good way to look at it to start with is, why did it happen? And then what control, did the control not work? Do we not have the right control in place? And then that will help you to work out, well, how do you actually rectify the situation moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes when you come along with a solution, for example, ApprovalMax, and when you put it in front of a client, you're like, this solution has been tested with thousands of people. So these processes have been tested with thousands of people and thousands of businesses. So maybe it's a good idea to actually think about implementing these processes, even if something hasn't gone wrong already. So
that's it. You're better off getting a front foot, and something like ApprovalMax, within 15 minutes, you're up and running and your approval workflows are set up, which, Justin will show us later. So it's not a real big investment to go in and have a try it out for a month and see what you think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to add to that, we have some, for our partners in our partner portal, we actually have some really good resources. Like we have a form that you can get your clients to fill in prior to setting up ApprovalMax, and we have some we also have some quick onboarding sheets. But some of these things can really help as well, sort of identify where the needs are by filling in a questionnaire.
Absolutely. So do you categorize financial controls to help detect, prevent, and correct? And if so, how do you do that? So are you categorizing your financial controls?
I am. So I guess as to how I look at it, preventative is basically stopping it happening. So to me, that's where ApprovalMax really is great at, is trying to catch it early on as far as should this bill be approved or not. Detective is basically, there's been a problem that you're trying to actually fix it as soon as possible. That's why I find myself and many other clients, the first thing they do when they wake up in the morning is they check their bank account. They see what came out of it. So they log in, what's my bank balance? Is that what I thought it would be? Da, da, da. So then if something went wrong, you can get onto the bank straight away or onto a staff member and sort it out. So to me, that's being that detective going, hey, what happened? And then that corrective is basically, okay, well, when something goes wrong, what do we do? And to me, that's okay. My corrective measure is I'll ring the bank or I'll go on to so-and-so and hopefully they'll sort it out. So to me, preventative is obviously the best source because that saves you having to do all that extra work. But in any sort of, things will still go wrong. So I guess it's making sure you've got some other processes in place, controls in place as those next lines of defense if needed.
Absolutely. Any thoughts on that, Justin?
Yeah, I might just talk about the detect part in particular. So ApprovalMax has some inbuilt inbuilt fraud detection in it. So like, I'll give you one example. One thing we do is after you've approved a bill, we then can alert you if any changes have been made to that bill inside Xero after it's been gone through that approval process. So that's really the detection. And then there's things like duplicate detection that we can warn you about, and there's a few, and sort of prevention. Like a good financial control is controlling who can add new vendors to your accounting system, and that's a workflow that we can set up as well. So yeah, it's kind of a mix of the technology, but then there's also the human element and the procedures, and you really need to get the full benefit. You need to do both.
Yeah, I really like the concept of an inbuilt fraud detection. And I have a confession. I actually failed my final auditing exam, and I put it down to the fact that I just couldn't think of sneaky fraudulent things to find in the scenarios they kept presenting me. I just was too innocent and naive. And I was like, God, I can't find anything in these scenarios. But if I have a tool, and there must be other people out there like me who just think that everyone is wonderful and trusts everyone. And so having a solution like that, it actually puts you between the issue and your own lack of awareness.
Trust but verify, if you remember that quote.
Absolutely, trust but verify. Love it. Can you discuss some effective methods of pressure testing and auditing financial controls?
I'll let you take this one first, Justin. I keep going first.
Okay. Effective methods of pressure testing and auditing financial controls. Okay, that yeah, I might. You're more experienced than Brandon. I might pass this one.
That's all right.
Sorry,
I picked the wrong one to be polite, so that's all right. So I was thinking about this and using that time, going, well, I probably haven't tested it deliberately, but probably accidentally I have. So at different times, a bill's gone through the system. So I use ApprovalMax, obviously, and someone will reject it or query it, go, hang on, what's that for? And what it'll be is I paid for my kids' app download on my work Amex because it's linked up. And they're going, is this work related? Oh, no, it's not. Sorry. So the system worked, right? But I must say, there was a while ago where that stuff was going through my books. And I picked up on it looking at my month-end accounts and said, well, why is Apple costs up? Oh, well, you put those costs through. I said, they shouldn't have. Oh, but we just assumed you have. I said, well, if you don't know what that cost is, I want you to ask. You know, when you approve it in ApprovalMax, that means you're happy with it. So don't assume, take that ownership. So to me, that sort of pressure testing is whatever financial controls you got, ApprovalMax or whatever, you know, the rubber stamp or whatever you're using. Do you want to sneak something through which is incorrect and see if the system picks it up? See if they go all the way through and pay it. You know, to me, it's mistakes in your financial reports, right? It might not be dollar-wise. It could just be coding. You could be a non-profit with 3 different funded codes and they've coded it to the wrong spot. And they know that that bill should not have been approved by this manager. It should have gone to the other department. But if this manager just ticks approve all the time because they just want to get it off their inbox, well, then them approving the wrong cost proves to you that they're not actually following your process and they're not a good financial control for you. So maybe something like that could be something you could do. I'd probably work out who in the inner circle knows about it first to make sure it doesn't go too far. But yeah, it's amazing. The system will pick this. The system can pick up a lot of it. You're still the human element. So I think part of it's a bit like the emails we get where it's for the toll or the text message with your toll e-tags expired, you need to top up. Yeah, those tests where you can test whether they click the link or not, or they think it's a scam. That could be a way to do it. And maybe there's a virtual environment down the track, Justin, we can create where people can test whether they're actually they're approving the right bills in a safe environment.
Are you
well,
go on, Justin, sorry.
Heather. Yeah, that did get me thinking. So in terms of the audit side of things, this is where probably the reporting functionality comes in. So when you're using ApprovalMax, you can set up your workflows and have have all the people who approve a particular bill or what have you. And often you say a board or something may not want to be part of that approval process. But what they may want to do is review what is actually being approved. And that's where you can schedule, build and schedule a report using ApprovalMax. And then going back to my auditing subject that I did many, many years ago, you might want to pick some of those bills at random and then bring up the audit report for that particular thing. And pretty much everything Brendan just said before, that really go, were you actually challenging this expense? Were you really thinking about, is this, and that's not just fraud, that's also just financial controls and pennies make a pound kind of thing as well.
So are you suggesting periodically pushing a dummy source document through the system to see if people pull it up?
I think so. From thinking ahead of today, I thought that's a great idea. But I must say, I reckon a couple are flowing through every now and then accidentally, or I've noticed, it's already happening inadvertently. But if you're not getting those pop up, then why not throw one through? And again, if you're the person controlling the payments, then you kind of know it's there, so it's not going to go out. So I know that is from that point of view. But to me, it's making sure that, have you got buy-in to the process? Because we talked about that at the start. If you don't have buy-in, your financial controls aren't going to work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know when it comes to cyber crime, the IT specialist will actually send out like a typical email periodically, and people shouldn't click on it. And if they do click on it, they get more training on why they shouldn't have clicked on that.
Okay. That's all.
Get
I didn't know that was actually a thing. I want to sign up to that program. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me launch another poll. We are finally in Zerocon month. So let me launch a poll here if I can. Oh, every time I do this, it opens up my screen.
All right, it's August already.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Back. How do I get there? Launch. How are you going to Zerocon Sydney? Yes or no, or maybe. And someone sent me a present out of the blue yesterday. Look at these tiny little earrings. She didn't even know I was an accountant, and they look like little zero blue earrings. So pretty amazing that she didn't know I was an accountant, and then pretty amazing that they matched my Zerocon. So Justin, Brendan, are you going to Zerocon?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, definitely. It's in my hometown of Sydney, so I'll be there.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
So we are actually running a Zerocon special that we're going to be doing 1 month for free of ApprovalMax. So we will be emailing attendees of this webinar those details through.
Fabulous, fabulous. And I hear you're might be even speaking at Zerocon, Brendan.
Yes, first time presenting at a Zerocon, so it's a bit nerve-wracking.
That's all right. We'll both be on debut, so we'll get through it together. And so I think we'll be on one of the demo stages to do a bit of a deeper dive into ApprovalMax and what it can do. And so looking forward to I've been to a few Zerocons and loved every one of them. So it'd be nice to have to go again and to meet up with some old colleagues, as well as this slightly different role as well, being at the front of stage rather than just sitting up the back somewhere.
Fabulous.
Yes,
sounds fabulous. Now, if you do have any questions, please pop them into the Q&A area, or pop them into the chat area. We can't hear you because of the setup, but if you do have questions, and drop them into those areas, and we will make efforts to answer them. So I think the poll has all gone down now. Let me come back. So we may have explored this, but let me ask it anyway. What are some common issues or weaknesses that pressure testing and audits might reveal? And I think one of the things that Justin and I actually have discussed in preparation for this was fraudsters never take holidays, which may be revealed. And I know I've had my own scenario of that. Fraudster never took holidays, always made birthday cakes, never took holidays. And that was $250,000 she fraudstered off with. Bless her. But what are some common issues or weaknesses that they may, is that the right one, that they may reveal? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, that never taking holidays thing is like a really, really common red flag. So one thing that's pretty cool in ApprovalMax is that you can actually delegate a role in the user settings of ApprovalMax. So people can't use the excuse, oh yeah, I'll just log in when they're on leave. Oh yeah, I'll just log in while I'm on holidays and do it remotely and whatnot. So you can, it's actually really good practice for if someone's doing a job, for someone else to rotate into that role for a while, because that's often how things get picked up. So just the fact that it's very easy to delegate someone's responsibilities with a click of a few buttons kind of eliminates the difficulty in doing that. Because some of these financial controls, they're easy to read in a textbook, kind of hard to do in practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Any thoughts on that, Brendan?
As accountants, we're often trained to look at the leave balances reports, sorted in highest hours to lowest, and look at anyone who might be over 4 or 6 weeks because they could be burnt out, or we might have a big liability with the next fair work increase. But one of the biggest reasons you should look at it is because of fraud and and key person risk for the organisation. As how do we function without this person, because we haven't experienced it for a couple of years. So you might find that there's some controls issues. You might find that there's some process issues, or no one else knows how to do what they do. So I think that's, there's a couple of good reasons there, other than dollars, directly to look at those reports. And I think, the holidays, and then otherwise, I think what we touched on before, it's have you really got segregation of duties, and have you got buy-in? Because if you don't have those, they're two weaknesses, I guess I see often when we talk financial controls, is that's usually where it lets them down. They thought they had financial controls, but they don't.
I went into one scenario, and the person had a relationship with the payroll officer and had 40 weeks of leave built up in there, because when she took leave, they never processed it as leave. So I was like, oh my goodness, when she actually leaves, you've got no way to prove that you don't have to pay this out, which is, again, crazy.
Wow.
So how do you balance having the technology versus having people in place, and so without compromising the effectiveness? So how do you balance, do we need more people? Do we need more technology? And how do we ensure that that's actually being effective for us?
Look, if the first thoughts with any sort of expansion is we need more people, I guess it's making sure we firstly understand what do we do, what's our core, and are we just throwing more people at a bad system or a bad process? Because what I find more and more businesses and are looking to build for is to build for scale, no matter how small they are. They want to go, I want to grow, and I don't want to just keep employing more people time and time again. So that comes back to systems and processes. So to me, I think first thoughts would always be, are we maximizing the technology we've got or that's available to us? And then if we're hiring people, we want that in that sort of core delivery of what we do, not just in this back-end admin management, because that's then taking away from what you're there for, and is going to mean that you're going to double in size, and you probably end up back where if we're talking profit, you may be doing twice as much work for the same reward. And why?
Yeah, it is an interesting one to navigate and get that balance correct. Now, Justin, are you ready to? Can I hand over you to give a ApprovalMax demonstration?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just share my screen.
So very excited. Justin is going to give us a quick demonstration of how ApprovalMax works. And we'll hand it to you for the while. Thank you, Justin.
All right, that looks like it's all coming through. So I'll just close out of here. Okay, sorry. Okay, so I'll just touch on what ApprovalMax actually is, and before I jump into the product. So what does ApprovalMax does? Well, it unlocks efficiencies for approvers and financial teams. It really replaces using paper, using email, messaging services, all kinds of ways of, or shouting across the office to actually have an approval process for approving your bills and purchase orders and other financial documents. A really key thing ApprovalMax does too is it can keep approvers and requesters out of your accounting system. So we know like the user roles inside both Xero and QuickBooks Online are fairly limited. So what it means is you can have staff come in, requesting bills and purchase orders, and also approving them without needing access to, say, Xero. Whereas if you can approve a bill in Xero, for example, that level of access allows you to see all the bills in the entire system, not just the bills for your team or department or whatnot. So that's a really big benefit. Another thing it allows you to do is it allows you to approve things on the go. So you can approve it via the web app, which I'll be going through today. But we also have a mobile app on both Apple and Android. And we even have a Slack tool now. So if you're a big Slack user, you can approve things inside Slack. Plus, you can also approve requests inside your inbox as well. There's an approve or reject button inside your inbox. And of course, touched on what we're talking about today, audit reports. Every financial transaction that goes through an approval process in ApprovalMax has an audit report attached to it that details everything: who approved it, the timelines, the whole thing. So what are some of the key features of ApprovalMax? So the purchase order approval, bill approval, credit notes, that's both on accounts receivable and accounts payable. We can also do an approval process for sales invoices as well. Batch payments, which I've actually, in my conversations with people, have really come to realize that a lot of people aren't using batch payments, they're actually paying bills one by one. They're not using the batch payment feature in Xero, for example. So that there's a huge efficiency there that can be gained by having an approval process for your batch payments. We do build a purchase order matching. So that way you can match the purchase order against the bill. That's another type of financial control. Plus, if you're using the budgeting feature in Xero, when you're approving a bill, you can actually see how that account code is tracking in a budget in Xero. We have a really powerful search reporting functionality in Audit Trail, which we sort of discussed earlier about how you can build reports even and send it to people who aren't even part of that approval process. Inbuilt fraud detection, I talked about that before. And then, as mentioned, there's the mobile app. So what I'll do now is I'll jump into my browser and I'll bring up ApprovalMax. So when you go into ApprovalMax, the first thing that you see is all the things that require your decision. Now, this is for across all the organizations you're invited into. So if you're, say, a larger organization that has multiple legal entities, you can see all the things you need to approve on this one screen. And when we bring it in from Xero, or we bring in everything, so you can look at the source documents that are attached, you can bring in all the line item details, account code, the whole lot. And then down the bottom we also have our approval workflow and audit trail. And you also have the option of matching a bill to a purchase order as well from this screen. So I'll just do that now. And And so you can put the amount and then it'll show you how much of the purchase order has been allocated. So if you have multiple bills that relate to a single purchase order, that can work as well. So I've reviewed this bill, so now I can approve it. And so I can just work my way through that process. So what I'll do now is I'll show you how you'd go about setting up a workflow in ApprovalMax. So if I go to the hamburger button and I scroll down and I go to approval workflows. So as mentioned before, you can set up approval workflows for purchase orders, bills, credit notes, batch payments, sales invoices, and also contacts as well. Plus, we have a feature standalone workflows for non-financial documents. If you want to have a financial, workflow, an approval workflow, you can approve other things as well, such as legal contracts and all kinds of other things. So the beauty of being able to set up different workflows for different types of documents is it really allows you to have that segregation of duties. So you can really separate the process for putting in a purchase order, for approving a bill, and then separating who actually pays it. So it makes that concept of segregation of duties much easier to implement in practice. Now, when I set up a bill workflow, on the left-hand side, you'll see that there's actually 3 ways that you can bring a bill into ApprovalMax for approval. The first way is by bringing it in from Xero. So if you create a bill in Xero and you set it as awaiting approval, we can import it from there, and then it can work your way through the approval process. Then you can also, as mentioned earlier, to keep people out of the accounting system, you can also create bills and purchase orders inside ApprovalMax, and it has all the same features and options to do that as what you'd have in Xero.
Can I ask a question, Justin?
Yes.
A question has come in. Now, hopefully I understand this correctly. The preparer has uploaded the information into Xero or HubDoc, but that preparer is unable to see it in ApprovalMax because only the approver has the visibility of status. Is that correct in the workflow there?
Yeah, it would depend. It would depend how it's set up, what access they have to ApprovalMax. So you can. The
preparer could, if they're given access, have read-only access. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it really depends on the user role. So yeah, when it comes from Xero, what you do is you assign a user who would get all the notifications about that, about that bill, inside Xero. So, but you can set up other users with different levels of access. You can set people up as admins. You can set people up as, or just the ability to do requests. So if you want people to be able to follow the request, that's probably a good idea. That's probably where, rather than getting them to set it up in Xero, you'd probably get them to create the bill inside ApprovalMax. So if we go down to the next level, we've got create a bill in ApprovalMax, and then we have, if we click on this little grid icon here, it brings up what's called the requester matrix. And then we can select what the person can request. So we can limit whether or not they have the ability to create new contacts. We can also set most of these fields as optional or mandatory. So let's say you're a company that uses a lot of tracking categories and you use tracking categories for everything. You might want to set the tracking category as mandatory. So you can set all these fields in here. And so I've got region and projects. Those are my 2 tracking categories. I've got accounts, I've got item, and tax. So I'll just leave that there. And it's, if you want to add any more requesters, it's simply a matter of just adding them in putting their email address in here. And you can have unlimited requesters. The third way you can get documents into ApprovalMax is we do have a direct integration with Dext. So you can have documents coming in from Dext, and in the same way, you'll want to assign who gets the notifications about those documents in here. So generally with these two roles here, from Xero and from Dext, you want to put that as someone like your admin at, finance at, your main sort of admin finance contact in your company. All right, so then you will want to set up your approvers. So I'm going to go add approvers, and I'm going to add Lucy, and I'm going to add Ali in here. So I've added them, but now I want to put in what they should be approving. So we've divided our team up into regions. So I'm going to put Ali. I'm going to put Ali for South. I'm going to put myself for North, and I'm going to put Lucy for East and West. But it doesn't have to be tracking categories. You could do it based on who the requester is. So if you want to have somebody just responsible for their team, you could set up requesters and then have the person responsible for their team. You could base it on supplier. You could have based on amounts, projects, and if multiple rules apply, you can also add alternative rules as well. So you've got all of those options. So if we go done, and then finally, we want to put in Amelia as the CFO. So we'll change that up here. You can change these headings. And what I want to do is any expense over $1,000 has to have that next level of approval, that it has to go to Amelia. So I've done all of that, and I can update the workflow and go confirm. So really what you're doing here is first you're thinking about what your financial controls and processes should be, as we discussed earlier in the webinar, and then you're just going into ApprovalMax and building the workflow that complies with what you've decided, and then more or less those approval process, those financial controls become a lot more automatic than they would if they were just in a Google Doc or a PDF somewhere. All right, so yeah, these are the other options. So what I might just do is show you the screen about creating a bill inside ApprovalMax as well. So if I go create new, I can just choose what I want to create and what entities I'm creating it for. And then all of these details get pulled from Xero. So if I go in and I go basket case, I put in a due date. I can put in, so it can even pull line items from Xero as well. So all of this is syncing with Xero. I'm going to set this to North, and then I'm going to submit that for approval. Now that's come through here, and now I'm also the reviewer in this circumstance, which is not a very good financial control. You want to have a requester and the review will be different, but I can review it all here. I can leave notes, and then I go to approve. And now that's approved. If I go to my bills, approved, I can now open it in Xero. Of course. This is why I recommend using the Xero push app because I got or what do they call it? Zero Verify, because that's how easy it was to do two-factor authentication. Okay, now it's come through and there's an audit report attached. So it's got all of those details in here. It's got the line items, who's approved it and whatnot. So when we're talking about sort of testing before, you could build a report at ApprovalMax that goes through, that gives you all the approved bills for that month. And then you could just pick some at random and go in and look at the audit reports for each of the ones. And then you could check whether or not your financial controls are in fact having the desired result that you're looking for. Now, if I want to go back to ApprovalMax, there's also a button that takes me back to ApprovalMax as well. And that takes me back, and the audit report also lives in here. So it lives in two places. It lives in ApprovalMax and it lives in Xero. So we wanted to leave some time for questions. So I might wrap up the demo and we might take some questions.
There's two questions in the Q&A area. Justin, do you want to pop in and answer them, or do you want me to read them out?
Let's
do you want me to read them out?
Yeah.
Okay. So can ApprovalMax be used instead of DEX? DEX being a receipt capturing extraction tool.
Look, not on the OCR side of things, not on the auto extraction. We don't do auto extraction. It really depends on the volume of transactions. If you need that automation, then we still recommend using Dext or a similar product. You can, if you're a HubDoc user, you can use ApprovalMax with HubDoc. All you've got to do is in HubDoc, set the bill to come in as awaiting approval, and then when ApprovalMax syncs with Xero, it will bring in that bill for it'll then pull it from Xero and then send it through the approval workflow that you've created.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Feel free to ask any other questions. That was an excellent demonstration there. While we're waiting, I'm going to throw up a poll while we're waiting. If any other questions come through, I'm sure Justin can answer them. And I'm launching. So this poll is, if you could quickly answer that, would you like to hear more about ApprovalMax? And if you do, our team can contact you and get in contact with you directly there. Fantastic. So if everyone wants to have a go at answering that, that would be great. And as doesn't look like any more questions has come through, so that's fantastic. I'll leave that poll up for a few more minutes, but maybe if we could come back in and I can come to, did a question come through? No. If I can come to, I've lost my screen. So many screens. So as we're moving towards the end of today's session, I'd like to ask each of our speakers to share what's one practical tip you'd like people to take away from this session, and how can people get in contact with you?
All right, I'll go first. So look, I think my practical tip is, once you set your financial controls, we talked about growing business, you may need to change them, you may need to revisit them. So don't just sort of set and forget. Make sure they're front of mind, and you set up a process so you can regularly monitor them, whether that's throwing the dummy invoice in or whatever, to sort of test the system, because it's only from your mistakes that we learn, and that's no different from a financial control environment. As far as getting in touch with me, so you'll see me at Zerocon on the demo stage and later this month, so come and say hi. Otherwise, you can find me on LinkedIn or any of the other social channels. If you look up Brendan Lucas CA, you'll generally find me around there somewhere.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Brendan.
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah. Well, we did actually. We had some questions come through. So there was one about non-for-profits. one for non-for-profits. We do in fact have non-for-profit discount, and it's a pretty decent discount. So yeah, definitely reach out for us. And about your question too about how people can get in contact, if you're an accountant bookkeeper, please go and sign up to our partner program that's on our website, the accountant and bookkeeper page. So you get a dedicated account manager. You get your own ApprovalMax organization for free, and we have a lot of resources for partners as well. If you're a organization or a small business, well, please create a trial. And I know some people are scared of like connecting an app up to their Xero file. If that's you, well, you can connect it up to the Xero demo company, and we'll actually import the sample data. And that's what I've been using today. So you know, if you really want to just like try to have a real good play around with the product, that's an option for you as well with the 14-day trial. Actually, that's probably my tip is if people want to little sort of learn by doing, go and create a trial and connect it to the Xero demo company, and then you can really try to break it and see how you go.
So I'm going to share my tip is if that you yourself, your business or your clients' businesses, you can see a heading for employees and are looking to potentially grow and are looking to potentially scale, contact them, reach out to them and ask just sit with them and do a current workflow, their current workflow in this particular area. And it should only take, it shouldn't be it shouldn't take you very long to actually do, but you will be able to see if there's any areas for improvement. And it's a really good exercise for both you to do, for them to actually visually see it. As Brendan was discussing, he does these on PowerPoint, so they can be done very simply, pen and paper, whiteboard, PowerPoint. And it's going to potentially surface something instantly or something that you need to deal with down the track. Okay, so thank you so much everyone for attending today. I'd like to thank our guest panelists, Brendan Lucas and Justin Campbell, and everyone at ApprovalMax, with special mention to Eloise Craddock, who assisted in the development and production of this webinar. I'd like to encourage everyone to connect with me and my fellow speakers on LinkedIn. And thank you again for attending today's webinar presented by ApprovalMax. Today's topic was implementing robust financial controls for businesses of any size. And I'm Heather Smith, and I've been your moderator for today's session. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, everyone.